When you cross the final line, an empath's love ended forever. This is not just a sentence, it is a psychological threshold that most people never understand until it is too late. Because an empath does not leave quickly, does not react loudly, and does not destroy relationships in anger. An empath absorbs, tolerates, rationalizes, forgives, and rebuilds emotional meaning from damage that would break most people instantly. But what makes an empath dangerous in silence is this: their love is not endless, it is conditional on emotional safety, respect, and truth. The moment you cross the final line, something inside them does not explode outward, it shuts down inward, quietly, permanently, and without warning. At first, you will not notice the shift. You will think they are still the same person because they still respond, still care, still listen. But you will not feel their warmth anymore. That emotional presence that once made you feel understood without explanation begins to fade. They are physically there but psychologically absent. This is the beginning of emotional detachment in an empath. It is not a reaction, it is a conclusion. They have already processed everything you did, every pattern, every excuse, every betrayal, and they have reached a silent verdict. This is no longer safe for my heart. An empath does not measure love by words, but by energy consistency. So when you lie once, they observe. When you lie twice, they analyze. When you lie repeatedly, they stop explaining your behavior to themselves. That is the real breaking point. Because the empath's suffering is not caused by your action alone, but by their repeated attempt to find goodness in you even when reality proves otherwise. That internal conflict is what destroys them more than betrayal itself. And when it reaches saturation, they stop fighting for understanding. They accept clarity instead. The final line is different for every empath, but it always contains one thing: emotional disrespect that cannot be reinterpreted as misunderstanding. It could be betrayal after trust was explicitly built. It could be manipulation after vulnerability was shared. It could be repeated emotional neglect while they were giving their best. Or it could simply be the moment they realize they are the only one carrying emotional responsibility in the relationship. Once that realization becomes permanent, love does not fade slowly, it collapses instantly in internal structure, even if externally nothing changes. What people misunderstand about empaths is that they confuse patience with tolerance. They assume because an empath stays, they are unaffected. That is false. Every act of staying is a decision to override internal pain. Every smile after betrayal is emotional discipline, not emotional peace. Every forgiveness is an attempt to restore balance, not a reset of trust. And when that discipline is exhausted, the empath does not argue, does not seek revenge, does not create chaos. They simply withdraw their emotional investment like a system shutting down power to a damaged circuit. The most terrifying part is how calm they become after the final line is crossed. No shouting, no dramatic confrontation, no long explanations. Because they have already had those conversations internally thousands of times before you ever hear a word. The empath you see after the breaking point is not confused, they are resolved. And resolution in an empath is final. It is not emotional. Confusion, it is emotional clarity so sharp that it cuts attachment at the root. You might try to fix it at this stage. You might apologize, explain, promise change, or even show sudden affection. But what you are trying to repair is not the moment, it is the pattern. And patterns cannot be repaired with emotional urgency. The empath is no longer reacting to your present behavior, they are responding to the memory of everything that led them here. In their mind, the relationship is no longer a living thing, it is a documented history of emotional cost. When an empath finally detaches, they do not hate you. Hate requires emotional connection. What they experience is absence. A psychological space where attachment used to exist is now empty. And emptiness is more irreversible than anger, because anger still cares. Emptiness does not. That is why empaths often seem cold after they leave. They are not becoming someone else, they are simply no longer emotionally participating in something. They have already left internally. And here is what makes this even more painful for the other person. Empaths rarely return once this stage is reached. Not because they cannot forgive, but because they no longer need to. Forgiveness for them is not about the other person, it is about restoring emotional safety. Once safety is broken beyond a certain threshold, forgiveness loses its function. There is nothing left to restore. The final line is usually not a single event. It is a compilation, a slow accumulation of ignored feelings, unacknowledged pain, repeated disappointments, and emotional invisibility. But the mind always looks for one moment to define it. One breaking point, one scene that symbolizes everything. And once that symbol forms in the empath's mind, it becomes irreversible. Because now the entire relationship is mentally categorized as unsafe experience. From that point onward, even memories change meaning. What once felt like love starts to feel like effort without Reciprocity. What once felt like connection starts to feel like survival mode. The empath begins to reevaluate every moment with new emotional awareness, and the illusion collapses. Not because love disappeared, but because perception evolved beyond it. And the most misunderstood truth is this: empaths do not leave because they stop loving. They leave because they stop abandoning themselves. The final line is not about what you did to them, it is about what they can no longer do to themselves in order to stay with you. That is why their departure feels so sudden. Because the decision was not made in the moment you saw it. It was made in every moment you did not see. So when you crossed the final line, you did not witness the ending. You witnessed the aftermath of a decision that had already been finalized in silence. And that is why an empath's love, once ended, does not restart. Not because they are incapable of feeling again, but because they finally understood the cost of ignoring their own emotional truth. And in that understanding, they do not become cruel. They become unreachable. Not lost. Not broken. Just no longer available to a place where their love had to die in order for them to survive.